Welcome to the 1876 Sports and Culture Podcast. As I always say, we have an exciting show for you today. So let's go ahead and get started with some locker room talk. The first thing I want to do is bring up our favorite Dr. Ruth Simmons. Looks as though the Center for Race and Justice will feature our journey so far. So I encourage those that can. This is going to happen on April 21st from 12:30 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. at the A.I. Thomas Auditorium. It's going to feature the EPA committee, the J.B. Coleman Library Archive, student researchers, and descendants of the Kirby family. And what are we going to talk about? Who knows? It's basically saying our journey so far. So again, if you are in the area, please check out this very important. Is this a seminar or what is anyway?
It's a seminar, and they're
Yeah,
going to go into the connection, Prairie View's connection with slavery, which, we know the history of Alta Vista plantation. So on this day of Easter, this is the day I like to remind our white supremacists around this country that Jesus was a black man from Africa.
That's why they took him to Egypt.
I'm sure that goes over well. I'm sure that went right. I mean, that put us right on the map right there. But it's funny you say that, right? It's interesting about how we have just adopted and just embraced the mischaracterization and misrepresentation of Yeshua. I'm sorry, I was a Bible scholar in my former life, but the J was not present during those times. So it was though Jesus, his name is Yeshua. But our European leaders at the time felt the need to completely eradicate everything that gave them the melanin skin that the Bible clearly says that he had in Revelations, for those who want to fact check me. And it even presents itself even into the artwork that was around in that time. All the artwork was even changed and removed all of the darker skin art of the apostles and even of Jesus. So the extent that some will go to make sure that the agenda is completely pressed forward. So but again, we are here celebrating Resurrection Sunday of Yeshua, and so with that, I digress because
we'll focus on that. He is risen. Let's focus on the.
Can we get a picture?
You make some of these Bible thumpers out here mad, brother.
Hey, come, hey, what the kids say? Get at me, bro. Get at me. Get at. Come, hey, question me. Come on with it. I will stand toe to toe and show you. You. Like, look, they tell us when we was growing up in Bible school, you got to study to show yourself approved. So, if you got it, come on with it.
Oh no, don't worry about me. I don't get into religious arguments. I understand that is very personal for people.
Yeah, it is.
So I don't get into arguments, and I don't like arguments anyway. I believe in dialogue.
Dialogue, exactly.
I only
the
debate
dialogue
my
is great,
as Dr. John Henry Clark said. So you don't have to worry about me, bro.
I say, can we get a picture of Black Jesus at All Faith Chapel? Can we make that happen? I'm just saying.
The one from Good Times.
Yes, that exact one.
Not Ned, right?
Ned
we gonna put Ned.
He said it was for Good Times. Yeah, that's
one.
Probably worth some money now, though. Actually,
hey man, Ned might go for a group.
Anyway,
maybe that.
In other news, again, I do not want to just move on, but happy resurrection, happy Easter,
happy resurrection.
Yeah. Okay, and so moving on, we are going to now talk about kudos to PV. PV, the Mellon Foundation awards PVAM $600,000 for the African American Studies program. So that means this fall, they're going to actually start the program. So you will now be able to attend PV and get you a degree in African American Studies.
Yeah,
more rolling off.
More money.
A major in African American studies, man. That's gonna be awesome.
That
That
is.
is.
I donated, so I support it. Let's go.
Me too.
Yeah, yeah.
Indeed.
I've always wondered, you know, in HBCU not having some type of African American studies. I always wondered why. So again, I think I know why, but that's neither here nor there.
You know.
Awesome. That's what
Did some
happens.
research on it and had the same question. It was amazing to come up with that. You're right. We all.
That's what happens when you have funding coming from outside resources, and you don't have to depend on the state or the A&M board to fund that program. Came from outside, so President Simmons got it funded.
Yes.
Great point.
Yes, definitely. Now, we talked about Grambling State. We talked about Southern. We talked about the alums, the fans supporting their spring game. So this weekend, this is Prairie View's time to shine. We have the spring game, purple and gold spring game. Just giving you a quick rundown. So the tailgate is going to open at 9 o'clock a.m. Okay. There's an alumni flag football. I actually just learned this the other day. So that is going to take place at 11 a.m. at Panther Stadium. Okay. Then there is an alumni tailgate that's going to start at 1:30 p.m. That's going to be in front of the Athletics Administration Building. Then there's a Panther Walk at 2:30. Please go and support our team. And then the game itself is going to be at 4 o'clock. Okay. So again, we talked about the numbers that showed up for Grambling. We talked about the numbers that showed up for Southern. Let's go and support our own in the same way, if not more.
And don't
Yep.
get
Well
something else to
said. I'm
talk
gonna walk
about.
it like I talk it. I'll be there.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Yes,
And
indeed.
just to remind the folks, 5,000 plus showed up at Grambling's for their spring game.
Yep.
7,000 plus showed up for Coach Dooley in the Dooley era at Southern.
And
So
we know that Jackson State game is going to be televised, so we can already anticipate the amount of fans and support that they're going to get. Okay.
20,000 plus, I'm estimating.
So we don't want to be here 1 week from today, all sad. Because we didn't get the support. So come on, PV fans. Show me PV crunk. Okay.
And I'm gonna drop a little nugget out there. A big time recruit, a D1 transfer, just dropped that he's considering PV in his top 6. This cat will change the entire face of the program if he comes to Prairie View A&M University. And he may be at the spring game.
Good Lord.
Yes.
Give his name.
Oh yeah, he's good.
He's good. He is. I'm just going to say, he is Kyler Murray 2.0.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say.
Okay. All right.
So show up, because there's going to be some recruits out there. Promise you.
Yeah. And as we're talking about
empty stadium.
Exactly. I don't want to see what I'm looking at right now with your virtual background. Okay.
Empty stands.
Empty stands.
Let's
So,
get it, PV fam.
Please. Speaking of the SWAC, let's go ahead and talk about Tennessee State University, and then also the announcement that Howard made recently.
Yes, let's start with Tennessee State. You've heard from the athletic director a couple of weeks ago that was in the newspaper that among many things, one of the things that captured the imagination of a lot of folks was to talk about going FBS. And then they had the announcement about Notre Dame. You had football coach Eddie George come back and talk about FBS desires. And then most recently, you had the Ohio State connection about him wanting to play that, and the fact that their desire to go FBS, they need to play teams and understand what it looks like playing at the FBS and facilities and all that kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating when you start talking about Tennessee State in the FBS. The biggest thing out there that many people need to consider when you're talking about FBS, there's a rule on the book now that you need to have a conference invite. So it's not about just hitting all the markers in terms of attendance, which they're way below, and those kind of things, is making sure you have a conference to be invited to. Well, when we talk about invitations, obviously there's some talk about whether they would consider coming to the SWAC. At this point, we don't know what that looks like, but you hear more of the FBS talk. So some people are intrigued about what that may mean and how likely that is. Well, you turn that over, and then you had a bombshell that came out of HBCU game day last night that broke the story. I've heard about it since January, is that Howard is likely to join the Colonial Athletic Association. There has been no public announcement from the Howard side of this. It leaked out that the Colonial Athletic Association was looking at Howard, talked about Hampton, and eventually you heard about North Carolina A&T. Hampton moved over pretty much immediately out of the Big South. A&T most recently made their desires known that they will move to the Colonial Athletic Association. That's the CAA, for those that may know about the acronym. They will do all sports starting in 2022-23 season. But furthermore, they'll stay one more season in terms of football in the Big South, and then they'll move over. So that would make 3 HBCUs that are moving to the Colonial Athletic Association. For those that may think about it, they understand that those schools were former members of the MEAC. MEAC had 6 teams in football, 8 in basketball, so now they're down to 5. And a lot of people are concerned about what will happen to the MEAC moving forward. For me, one of the things that I look at is just the frustration in terms of a Black institution that is going to have major struggles. And furthermore, what that will do to the economic base of small Black African-American businesses and the association, obviously, with the HBCU conferences. This, frankly, reminds me of the Negro Leagues in terms of its demise to some degree, those that may be familiar with the Midwestern Athletic Association. So it'll be something to keep your eyes on and what this means moving forward. And finally, in terms of coming back full circle to Prairie View and the SWAC, how will this eventually have an effect on the Celebration Bowl, which most of us realize is the champion of the MEAC versus the champion of the SWAC? Will this have any effect on that game moving forward?
To me, that is the big deal. You're talking about $1.5 million to both participants of the Celebration Bowl. I think we can all come to the logical assumption that, let's say, any one of those schools that are moving from the MEAC to the Colonial Athletic Association, they're not going to be able to financially make up that potential 1.5 million that they would have gotten in a Celebration Bowl. So if you say, okay, they're not potentially making this move for financial reasons, then why would they prefer to associate themselves with the PWI conference, essentially, as opposed to an HBCU conference?
Wow.
That's the $1 million question, Joe, when you talk about brand association, because that's what I see this as you believing that the brand association of the Colonial Athletic Association is better than the Big South and also better than the MEAC, which is frustrating for me to see, just to be frank about it. The other thing that I think is interesting that I hadn't heard out there, we like to do data points, as Mike liked to say, is that Colonial for the last couple of years has an 8-game conference schedule, much like the SWAC. And at the FCS level, unless you had a 12-game year on the extra Saturday, you play 11 games essentially, which means they'll only have 3 games where they can schedule a non-conference game. Obviously, you have the 2 games that you'll have against HBCUs if they're all in the same division. And then you'd like to play one money game, which means you may have 2 options to play HBCUs outside of that. For A&T, for example, you would imagine they're still going to play Central, so they might play 1 more. So that means traditionally, instead of playing 8 or 9 against HBCU Division I, you're going to be now playing only 4 games, 3 to 4 games, which means you're talking about 55% to 50% drop in your participatory against HBCU FCS Division I games. To me, that's significant when you start thinking about that over a long period of time. And the last thing, when you said $1.5 million, that equates to the team that goes to the game. They get 70% to 80%, depending on the conference. That's like $1.02 million or $1.2 million that's off the table. So where is that additional money coming from? And you got to imagine that there's going to be a difference in terms of those interested in following and attending your home game. So fascinated to watch. We'll see the world of HBCU sports has changed. And it might not be for the good.
First, the fat boys break up now this. This just don't it just don't make stuff. Make it make sense, man.
Make it make sense. And before we move on to the next, when you bring up the Negro League, I'm always reminded of how that was such a functioning, it provided employment for our people, and the mere fact that when they had to basically, the demise of that league was the demise of jobs, the demise of the economy for Black people. So it is definitely sad, definitely sad. And we'll be back to talk some spring sports.